Welcome to Business Eye, Friday lunchtime, live in Dundrum Shopping Centre. And Simon is not with us today. He's in the UK getting all those cheap Christmas presents. Hope he buys me something nice, actually. I must say that to him, drop a few hints on it. But yes, we have some interesting guests today. In studio at the moment, I have Ian McClean. Is that right, Ian McClean? Ian McClean. Sorry, Ian, I always mix up people's name. So respond to anything. And you are with a company which is called Flo Group.
That's it.
What is Flo Group?
It's a consultancy that works with businesses of all sizes and all dimensions, to help them with the people side of being more effective.
Yes, because when we get into consultancy, there is a vast range of different consultants. Like myself, I'm a consultant for businesses, but I help them with their marketing and their sales, mindset, marketing and sales. Other people help consult with finance and so on. And as Simon would be with negotiation and leadership. But you said helping them with their people. Please tell me more.
Well, the business is a game of two halves, if you want to coin that, adopt the footballing cliche. And one half of business is what we refer to as the mechanics. So they're the systems and the processes and the policies and the procedures and
the governance
and the structures and the now AI and the reporting and strategies and projects. Right. I can see what side of the fence you're on. But it's for some businesses that's all there is.
Yeah.
But it's only one half of the equation.
Yes, true.
And the other half of the equation are the humanics, because if you think about the machine and mechanics, the wheel of business doesn't turn without the oil of human interaction.
Cybernetics.
And that's the piece that we do. And very often, business is very comfortable with mechanics. In fact, it's a lot more comfortable with the mechanics because it's tangible and it's measurable and it's.
It's true, because businesses need those tactics. A lot of businesses run on tactical movements like a chessboard, but they forget, if they're in business for a very long period of time, they sort of forget about the strategy end because they're working on the tactics. And it's interesting, I wrote an article on LinkedIn there a while back, and it was to do with strategy and tactics. A lot of companies, and correct me on this, is all they do is want to do, where they should be stopping and thinking, strategizing, and then going with the workflow.
I fully agree with that. And even within strategy, because a strategy is a mechanic in and of itself, it doesn't implement itself.
No.
Projects don't implement themselves or deliver themselves, and strategies don't implement themselves. You still need human interaction in order to deliver a strategy.
Thank God.
So, so that's the area, because humans by definition are, we have our frailties. So we have our superpowers and we have our kryptonites. And then everybody's flawed in some way. And you bring that to the table when you're interacting with other people. And that often can create breakdowns that get in the way of getting stuff done.
The lack of, yes, because one person might be an introvert and one person might be an extrovert, or one person might be a system thinker and another person might be creative. And these all just around to get that right mix.
Well, difference is something that we know we should embrace, because, the more difference there is, the more diversity there is, the more creativity and innovation you can have. But it excludes the realization that difference is also the number one cause of conflict.
Would you feel that a lot of businesses, and say a lot of leaders and a lot of managers out there who are looking after teams, before they get educated or before they understand or are trained, they see the whole team as they perceive how they think? And then they will try and push their ideas on it. Like, if I'm an extrovert or I'm a go-getter, I want everyone in this team to go like this because that's the way I do. Where when they sort of be reskilled is probably the better word, to go, hang on, you'll get more out of John if you treat John in this way, and you'll get more out of Robert if you treat him. Not everyone thinks like you.
Well, that gets into the heart of the equipping leaders and managers to lead and manage. And what typically happens in most organizations is somebody's very good at sales. And because they're very good at sales, they quickly ascend. And then, the The big prize is they get appointed sales manager, or somebody's a very good tax advisor. And then, all of a sudden they get a team of tax consultants or advisors to manage. And the thing that often gets forgotten, the assumption is that just because you're good at sales or just because you're good at tax advisor, just because you're good at coding, it assumes that you're going to be a great leader and manager of people. But the skill involved in doing that is completely opposite. And
totally.
Organizations are not very good, by and large, at developing their leaders and managers from the point that they're newly appointed all the way through to if they continue to progress, which is why you get the whole idea of the Dilbert principle, where you get promoted to the point of your own incompetence.
Yes, and then what happens is it's the redundancy, or it's the doubt turns into the fear, and the fear turns into the anxiety, and then that person is dealing with a whole new different emotions because they feel they need to be that top accountant who was looking after the people, where they were quite happy doing what they were doing, and should have been. Should they have got promoted, or should they have stayed where they were, or should have been a skill set put into them in place before they got that promotion?
That's right. That's exactly it.
Yeah, and is that what you do? You go and there's me banging the table, and
the thing you told me not to do,
not to do, banging the table.
Huh?
And
this is about leading by example, Joe.
Yes, it is. Yes, where's the coffee? Where's the coffee? We didn't even get a coffee because you were running late.
So I got no coffee, and now you were banging the table.
Tell me, time is something that is very precious, and the reason why I'm mentioning it is we spoke at the break about time, and you said to me, which was intrigued my curiosity, that you were aware of time at an age of a teenage, when you were a teenager, and I only really came to realise how important time was probably in the last maybe 5-6 years. It could be longer, but that's what I'm. And it's the only thing that we don't have enough of. Everything else is precious. And I even got a nap on my phone, which everyone thought was very morbid. And I typed in, I'm going to live till I'm 86. So I was counting down every day, hour, minute, till I came 86. And people saying, that's very morbid. And I says, it's not. It's to show me how little time I have left and what I can do with it. Instead of going, oh yeah, I'm sitting here waiting till I die. But is that sort of the same attitude of what you had yourself at that age?
Yeah, I was one of those people, Joe, that seems to have been born old. Okay. So for as long as I can remember, I kind of had an awareness about things that were way beyond my years. So I was the kid who, was often asking the really difficult question in the class to the teacher, the existential questions. The books that I had were kind of lined up. They were existential books like Camus and Hermann Hesse and, Nietzsche and all that. And I'm talking about when I was in my early teens. I was the kid that, people used to come to whenever there was a dispute. They came to me to kind of resolve the dispute in the playground or in the team, sports team or anything else. So I was kind of one of these, my friends were always older. I gravitated towards older friends. I had more female friends than I had male friends, simply because...
They're better fun.
Why not? But females are typically more advanced in those years mentally. So back to the time equation. What was very obvious to me from as far back as I can remember was that you get one shot at life, and what you do with it is critical. And time it's very democratic because everybody's got the same 24 hours in the day. Nobody has got any more, no matter who you are or where you are in the world. It's totally democratic. It's what you do with it that becomes the issue. And these were thoughts that I was filled with whenever I was a teenager. And I can remember career guidance. Two things. My father was a primary school headmaster. He was a primary school teacher for 42 years. So he was a rock of sense in a small rural parish. Himself and the parish priest were the two icons, and the doctor. And the doctor,
yeah, sure. The priest had more power than the police.
Well,
yeah.
That's another day's discussion.
Day, yes.
Let's leave that one aside. But what I can remember is my career guidance teacher and my father, when we were talking about careers, were exhorting me to take the permanent pensionable route. Go for a job in the bank. My dad was a teacher, wanted me to be a teacher. Go for the guards. This was it. And I can remember very clearly thinking, whatever you do in life that you work at and you choose as a career, you spend a huge chunk of your time dedicated to it and devoted to it. So I made a pact with myself in my mid-teens that whatever I would choose to do in life, I would only do it if I continued to enjoy it and if I thrived while I was doing it. And that has kind of informed everything that I've done from that day to this.
It's interesting because I would probably have been of the same mind as yourself, and all through the teens and in my 20s, I always kind of had this thing, life is meant to be easy. Life is not meant to be a struggle. And I sort of had this thing in my own mind, and like yourself, I'm a great reader. I read all the time, and I'm curious as hell, and that helps me pick up books and helps me just absorb so much information in all different aspects of what I find interesting. But it was always that level of life is not a struggle. Life shouldn't be a struggle. It's meant to be enjoyable. You're meant to have a happy life. And I went on that search. Now, that search has brought me through many different countries and has brought me through different spiritual levels as well, and has also brought me into the understanding of who I am as a human person. And I have happily now live a joyful life. And as you said there, Ian, we all have 24 hours in a day. Yeah. Everyone is the same. Is it the mind? Do you, in your opinion, do you feel that it is the mindset, the person's attitude, or is it nurture or nature that gets them to where they want to be?
It's a really good question. And, there's two sides of the argument. And if you ask experts in psychology, behavioral psychology, or any branch of psychology or therapy, they will argue different things. But, my own view is that it's an absolute combination of the two. I used to be of the persuasion that you were so you're born with the DNA. And you have you're basically given a set of cards that are the essence of who you are. And then everything that happens from that point on is overlayered on top of that. And then you create layers and layers and layers of sediment that is the human experience. Every moment from the time you're born, even your birthing, all the way through to your upbringing and your parent, how you were parented, and what happened to you in your early formative years. It's the first 7 years. The whole Jesuit principle of, give me the boy for 7 years and I'll show you the man. And then you continue to evolve as you go along. And then if you take the basic DNA and all the overlaying of sediment that's happened over the period of time and you combine them, you end up in a Yeatsian world where he said, how do you know the dancer from the dance? So this is why it's very difficult to disaggregate what's nature and what's nurture. And we run across this an awful lot when we run into, because a lot of the work we do is very deep within organizations with the people side of it, either through coaching people on a one-to-one basis. So we do a lot of executive coaching where you work with teams, and teams are a system. So if a team is functional and high-performing, it's because the system that is governing the team, which is typically unconscious, is a very benign system. If there's a dysfunctional team, which is often why we would get brought in to work with the team, when it's dysfunctional, it's because the basic system, the operating system, is wrong.
I would agree with you. And you're talking about the DNA, and like they're writing articles now that do entrepreneurs have a certain DNA in it? And we know through DNA, we know that it's fast muscle fiber type or short muscle fiber type for in sport if you're running. We know about nutrition and how different nutrition can treat people with genetics. And then looking what you're saying is that, yes, from 0 to 7, you show me the boy. And the reason why that's so important, which we're realising now, a child from 0 to 3 has a different wavelength in their brain from when we have. So the wavelengths change, and they're playing with something without them realising their brain is taking in all that stuff that's going on around them, and that's teaching them. And that's if the parents are shouting or the parents are happy or the siblings are. And that without that child realising, it's all that information. Even I believe in the womb, a baby is picking up all the information and all the sounds. It's bringing up to that. And then, yes, that can then make that person be the person they are, if they negativity or positive. But I think if you, and which maybe happened to you at that early age, was when you have a realization, we all have it at some stage, and then we fight for that paradigm shift to go, okay, I can be better than what I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we the work that we do, obviously with corporate organizations, you're dealing with people as they now are. So our interest and focus isn't on how they got to where they are, which is kind of speculative. It's more, where do they go from here into the future? You know, next
the
week,
past
next month.
is the past.
They are where they are, and you know, the work we do is, it's not the work of counselling and therapy. It's the work of helping them move from where they are now to a better place, whether it's within themselves or their career or within their teams or the team itself or the department or the whole organisation, and that's what we do. We're like performance doctors, so we kind of diagnose what's working, what isn't working, and we help put in the help that will enable organisations, teams, individuals, departments to move from where they are to where they want to be.
If I was to ask you a question off the cuff, values, what would you say your 6 top values are?
Personally?
Yeah.
Well, it's I can tell you what the top 3 are, because they became the values. So the business, the Flo Group business that I started in 1998. So it's 21 years old this year.
Happy birthday.
Yeah,
I'm 50 next week, do you know that?
Oh yeah, well, I've seen that one. Not so long ago, but I have.
Yeah.
So 21 years since we started, and I started the business from the bedroom, not even the spare bedroom, because I needed the rent. So actually, I started it from my own bedroom, and I can remember I lived in a 2 up, 2 down in Kilmainham, and I can remember the first day that the computer arrived. And it arrived in a huge, big. Now, talk about.
Do you remember then? It was so exciting, wasn't it?
Well, it was very exciting, and it reminded me this week when I heard the government story. I could hardly get it in through the window, right, or in through the door. Such was the size of the box. It was a Dell, you know,
Yeah.
and trying to get it in through the bedroom door. I had to take the architraves off so that we could get it in. But anyway, so that the only reason I say that is to say that when I started the business, I started it off with 3 core values, and the 3 core values, which exist and have informed the whole business and the decision-making throughout the last 21 years. The first is partnership. So the whole idea that we don't instruct and teach and it's all one way. The only way things work, or the way they work best, is when you're working in partnership or in tandem with the person on the other side. So that could be a whole organization that you're working with. So if we're working with Irish distillers, or we're working with Google, or we're working with whomever, unless you've got a partner on the other side with as much interest in the game as you do, then, and when you do, it really does work very, very well.
Yeah,
it's the symbiosis, because what they bring to the table is, and if it's an individual where you're doing one-to-one, a CEO, for example, they know themselves more than you do. So you can't know what they know about themselves or the organization, and you know what they can't know, which is why they need help. And it's the symbiosis of the two. So that's the whole partnership idea. And that's the first thing. And I'm a great believer in that. And whether it's in my marriage, whether it's with my kids, whether it's with my friends, this whole idea of partnership where you're looking and striving to always create value to both sides. And I mean value in the broadest and the most general sense. The second one is authenticity. So authenticity, when I nominated it or named it as a value 21 years ago, nobody was talking about authenticity. What's very interesting is that 21 years later, authenticity is one of the kind of watchwords and the buzzwords of the era. And the reason it is because there's so little trust. So if you look outside, you don't need to look too far in the world to see how so much is broken down. Trust in our institutions, trust in our politicians, trust in our governments, trust in our processes, political processes, trust in our banks, trust in our churches, trust. So if you take the last 21 years, there probably hasn't been a denudation of trust to the same degree in the history of mankind as there has been in the last 21 years. And now you've got populism and you've got all the reactions to that. So that's the second thing. So authenticity. And what I mean by that and how it shows up in our business is, you talked about consultants earlier on and consultancy. There's no barrier to entry to being a consultant. So anybody today can decide, I'm going to be a consultant. They put a plate on the door, ABC Consulting Limited. If they've got a good graphic designer and they're a good curator of content, they can represent themselves to be everything that has taken us 21 years to be. And they may or may not be it. So that's why consultants very often get a bad name, because there's significant proportion of consultants who, because there's no barrier to entry, there's no regulation in the sector, can turn up and do a half-baked job. So authenticity is the whole idea that we eat our own cooking. So everything that we teach our own clients, we've road tested it first in our own business. And actually, the interesting thing for me has been, we're talking off air a little bit about, or even at the start, where you were talking about the chessboard and the board. The whole idea of business is interesting because evolving and developing a business from the room at home all the way through to, across 4 continents is something where the evolution of that has been very interesting. And applying the principles, it's been like a test laboratory. So if this is going to work, I've got to apply the principles. And authenticity is one of the core values. Never kind of compromising on what we believe ourselves to be right and to be true, even if it means walking away from work sometimes, which we have done. And then the third principle is difference. And not difference for the sake of being different, but difference because the space we're in, you talked about mindsets a second ago. Unless or until, if people, one of the core things that you need to understand about people that is yielding the performance that they're getting on the other side is their mindset and how they think.
Ian, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to jump back after the break and talk about trust and some of the stuff you spoke about there.
Broadcasting to South Dublin on 93.9. This is Dublin South FM.
You're listening to Joe Dalton on Dublin South FM, community radio with a global audience.
And welcome back to Business Eye. Ian, before the break, we were talking about values, and you mentioned 3 core values with your company, which started 21 years ago. Happy birthday. And one of the things that you mentioned there is trust. And you were bang on. There is so much, social media has given us a platform that anybody can get up and say anything. But it's all about building the trust. And what I say to a lot of my clients is, you have all these information out there. It is about trust. People don't buy because you're sold to. You buy because of trust. But you have to build that trust. So there is you have to start off with who is your client, as we know. Then it's even before you getting into that, it's building that trust with them and getting them to understand. And then the trust has to get them to fall in love with you. It's understand this is the people that we can help. We trust them, but now we love their message and what they're doing. And then it's getting into the sales. And then it's getting into the system, where a lot of people believe it's lead sales. Oh, I didn't get. And it's if companies take a step back and stop trying to rush things and sort of go, okay, what do I want for my client? Or even ask yourself this question, what do I want for me? Because what I want for me, I then can offer for my client, or what I want for my client, I will receive for me as well. So if a company wants great leaders, you become a great leader and you show them to be the best leaders. So then that's what you'll become. Or if you want to, to be the best sales trainer, you show people how to be the best sales trainer. And so you'll be do you see where I'm at? And I think we're lost. I think people are lost. I think companies are confused. I think there is a lot of confusion out there because they're seeing all these mixed messages coming in at 100 miles an hour, and they're not actually stopping to kind of wake up and smell the coffee. So what do you, in your opinion, feel is the one issue that businesses have or need fixing with, or even if they do?
There's a lot more than one.
3,
yeah,
10.
But I would say if you round it all up into the thing that we're seeing, because in 21 years you've seen different trends and different challenges. So I can very clearly remember what it was like in 2009, whenever the world fell off a cliff. It's very, very different now to what it was just less than a decade ago, when we had that correction. And I would say, if I were looking at what characterises the challenge now, is we have an age of technology and digital world that is rampant, and the implications and the impact of that on our humanity and how it's affecting people in the workplace it's still impossible to tell. and impossible to understand. One of the things it's doing is it's creating a greater level of disconnection. So the need for connection, so you go back to trust. If you believe that trust is the gateway towards, building a better business and building a better world, let's say, or building a better culture in your organization, which leads to higher productivity, that leads to better business, if you don't want to be altruistic about it, then you need to find a way in a world which is looking at technology as the solution because of everything that it offers. And, it's kind of like a magpie solution. It's very glittery and you're attracted towards it, and it's very distracting. Then finding ways to connect at a human level with people in a way that creates meaning and enables the trust to build. That's one of the big struggles. We're finding some major companies, blue chip companies, global ones, that we're working with who are experiencing an incredible amount of burnout with their managers, leaders, executives, and all the way down. Because if leaders and managers and executives are burning out, then guess what? It's got a trickle-down effect.
Don't touch the pool table that's there in the corner. It's for people to look through the window at. Yeah.
Can I get out of this lazy boy now?
Yeah.
So that's a major one.
I believe what is needed in the world is to people to be more aware. These are my opinions, is that awareness is important. Awareness of what's going on around you, awareness of what's going on in the office, awareness of your clients, awareness internal and external, but also truth. I think truth is something that is lacking in the world as well. And more and more, like yourself, I've created, out of this frustration and seeing what's going on, and worked with large organisations and working and interviewing hundreds and hundreds of people through the shows and the station. I created this sort of need, and I created the Conscious Business Academy, and it was created to try and help companies to realise that we're all human beings. Take the label of the accountant, which we spoke about earlier on, or the tech guy. Take all those labels away and treat each one as a human being. As Bob or John, but Bob and John in the office. You only know 25% of John. That other 75% of John could be having a really bad time at home or something. You don't know that. And you have to realise that as well and understand that within it. And strip down, I'm getting to the belief now that companies, we talk about branding and branding this, branding that. It's not. And it's not. Why not run your organisation as a community? Because that's what we've lost outside of work, where we lived in communities, and grandparents and your parents and all used to look around. When everyone lived and the key was in the door, and we walked you went to school barefoot and that gravel, but they were communities. And then as we got wealthier, you don't know who your neighbours are, and you don't know who's living in your apartment block. So the only way then for doing that is community, and the community then make the company the community, and then let's see what happens on it.
And to add to that, and I'd reinforce it, is back to there's two elements that come together in this. One is the whole breach and breakdown of trust out in society and in institutions, and the extent to which people spend more and more time at work, and it's so central. People are now looking for community in their workplace, and the context of that, though, because digital is on and you're always on. Once upon a time when I started, I can remember the very first mobile phone, the NEC P3, which I had in 1997, 1998. It was like a brick.
Yeah, I had one as well.
The Aircell first tagline was connecting people, not places, which was kind of, it was amazing. You didn't have to be in a place. You now could connect through a phone. Now you have moved 21 years later to an always-on culture. Most businesses are global. If you look at the level, particularly in Ireland here, foreign direct investment, the number of US multinationals that exist here that Irish people are working for. Google, as I understand it, employ more than 9,000 people here now in Ireland, which is remarkable. And you think about the fact that you're probably being asked to operate across 3 different time zones. So it's not unusual now for people to have to be awake whenever Australia's awake, and at the same time be awake whenever San Francisco's awake.
Yeah, we know people that are working in their jobs here and then taking calls in America at 11 o'clock at night.
So if you take the two things and combine them, 2 into 1 doesn't go. You have a situation where people are looking for community in their workplace, but they're so time-strapped and time-poor that under pressure of time, I don't have the time to actually connect with people in ways that make it meaningful and make a community there. They might even want to or aspire to, but they've lost the art and the act of knowing how to anymore. And this is because now people connect through digital media, through digital communication. The actual art of having a face-to-face conversation with another human being and doing it in a meaningful way, that's the bit. And we actually had to go and create a whole proposition around this, which has gone from a zero start to accounting for about 40% of our revenues, called Green Line Conversations. It's just an ability to have and connect with people in ways that's meaningful.
And one of the reasons why I love radio, it's that conversation and the communication with people. Video has helped us get there as well. But you're right, a lot of people, a friend of mine, he's a speaker in London, and he was asked to do a speaking gig, and he says, let's jump on the phone. And he says, oh no, I'm more comfortable to text. And I go, okay, well, if that's what it is, that's what it is. But that mindset of this is how we communicate on it. And
you think about digital natives who've only ever grown up with, surrounded by digital. I mean, you and I are not digital natives. At least you're definitely not children. But so you at least you remember a time when that's all there was and that was the main thing. But what about if you're a digital native and you have grown up in a world where the permissiveness around being on screens and communicating and texting with your friends through text and through FaceTime and so on?
Yeah, it's like I even remember in my early 20s when mobile phones was it early 20s? Yeah, early 20s when everyone sort of had the mobile phone, and you used to call in to say to like a Black Rocket down the area of your town, and you'd go looking for your friends. And when you were going looking for friends, you'd call into 4 or 5 different bars. And in those 4 or 5 different bars, you'd meet 1 or 2 people in there, and you'd have a chat with them. And oh, great, and all that. Says, I'm looking for Killian and Sean and whoever. And then you'd go and you'd find them in a bar. But you would have connected with so many people in different bars, building your network up. And when the phone came out, it was text, where are you? So it was speeding things up then without us even realising, but it was taking away the art of that communication of the guy that you bumped into in school and you hadn't seen in 6 months. That was all disappearing. And that was even, I noticed that in our early 20s. And says, how is this going to evolve? And we can see today how it has evolved. We've X amount of friends on Facebook that they're your friends, but you walk past them in Tesco's downstairs because you don't recognise them, but you'll talk with them online. So it's only evolving and it's only getting better. But I think the emotion or the emotional attachment that people have, I think people are craving for this. And I think this is one of the, you were, as you said, at 13, 14, you were a futurist, if you want to call it. You were thinking ahead of the box. And those 21 years now has given you that platform to kind of go, okay, I'm ahead of the game here, lads. I know that you want the communication. Let's try and salvage what we have. I'm going to say this as humanity before it gets way out of control.
Well, it's the one thing that hasn't changed in 21 years is humanity. What surrounds us has changed.
Yeah.
Almost unrecognisably.
Yeah.
And all you got to do is look at the reeling back the years, anytime you want to watch it, or Pop Goes Northern Ireland or anything on the TV, and you'll see, how absolutely things have transformed.
Yeah, but humanity, and people say, oh, worry about AI, and it says, AI is brilliant, but it doesn't have an emotion, and it never will. And there it is on it. Ian, tell me, we're going to wrap it up here now. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Where can people connect with you? Give us your LinkedIn details or give us your website and all if people want to reach out.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is Ian McClean. You'll find me on LinkedIn, McClean. And the company is called Flo Group. And the chapter that we have is the UK and Ireland chapter. So it's flowukandireland.com. And then the conversations piece that I mentioned for those who are interested in creating meaningful connections and trying to resolve conflict particularly is greenlineconversations.com. And have I missed anything, or do you want to give a quick 10 seconds another 24 hours we could probably...
We could talk for a while.
Solve the problems of the world.
Well, that's what we're here for, isn't it? That's what we're all here for. on it. Ian, thanks for coming on to Business Eye. And that's it, folks. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Your community radio for South Dublin. This is Dublin South FM.
You're listening to Joe Dalton on Dublin South FM. Community radio with a global audience.
And yes, folks, on this part of the show, we have Mike Stevenson. Mike is a speaking sensation, so that's what his LinkedIn says. I'm going to find all about that. And Mike, how are you?
Very well, thank you very much.
So
the sun is shining here in Edinburgh, so I'm feeling full of positive spirit.
Brilliant. Yes. Unfortunately, Simon can't be with us today. He's in London, but he was raving about you, saying you're a super guy and we need to speak. So welcome to Business Eye.
Oh, what a flattering introduction that is. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be on.
So tell me this, sir. Your business is all about Thinktastic. What is that? Explain that to me, please, and the audience.
Well, listen, I had a marketing business for 19 years and it went awry during the recession. So I wanted to start again. And I was reading this book by, I think it was Joseph O'Neill, who's an Irish New York writer. And he was talking about, building a cricket pitch in New York. And everyone was kind of doubting him and, playing along with him. He eventually did achieve his dream, but he kept saying, I think fantastic. And I thought, what a lovely concept. So I put the two words together and created Thinktastic. And, basically it's about being big, bold and brave and, using examples from around the world and helping people to achieve, something greater than their minds and their abilities, currently allow them to do.
When you say that, are you talking about how people changing their mindset in their day-to-day business or in their day-to-day life, or helping people be bold in their business?
Well, there is a mindset thing, but most people's mindset is kind of predetermined by their experiences. And, I've had a very varied life. I can go on about that. But it started off pretty badly. So I'm able to use my own kind of life story as a metaphor for business. And the thing about business is, it gets very settled. And, it's very difficult to avoid hubris when things are going right. And it's sometimes very difficult to find solutions when things start to go wrong because you begin to panic. And the worst thing for me is when businesses think they're going well and they kind of rest on their laurels. And, I have spoken to so many businesses that would attest to that being the case. And, what can you do when you bring someone from the outside who's got, a whole different energy, can see things very clearly because they're standing on the outside looking in, and can help people to, make quite dramatic developments. So, I do it by speaking. I'm speaking in Derry, actually, in January. I've just got that booking. And it really is helping to unlock people from any kind of fixed mindset. So there is a mindset thing. But there's also, how do you do it and what do you do? And sometimes, that is the kind of inspirational thinking that I can bring, because I can use examples from all around the world of how, people have accomplished something well beyond their ken, as we would say in Scotland, and, inspiring people to think a bit more creatively about solutions. And it's that bit of creativity as well that
drives it through. It's so you're talking about the paradigm shift. You're getting people to actually realise that's change. And you said that you have, let's say, a colourful life. And what I say, what you're doing there is, and we probably are of the same ilk, is wisdom. Because wisdom brings us knowledge, and when you can speak to someone from a wisdom point of view instead of an educational point of view, you do greater.
Yes.
And also it's sort of about, we all have products and we all have services. Yeah. And it's all I've learned, and it was like a good friend of mine, Mike Hancock, said there to me the other day as well, and it kind of registered with me, is it's about action and attitude. And that's what it's about. A lot of companies go, okay, we have this, we are bringing in X amount of business, and as you said, sit on the laurels. But what really needs to do, okay, what can we do now, that extra 5%, to keep this growing and growing and growing on it?
Absolutely, and I agree. Everything I speak about, I can draw on my own experience, and that gives it an authenticity. And you're right, the word wisdom, yes, I would accept that, because when you keep learning in life, you keep your mind open and you keep learning, then, you speak with a kind of enthusiasm and a freshness and energy. I'm not some kind of wizened old man sitting back, smoking a pipe, able to tell wise stories to my great grandchildren. I don't have any
from
children.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, exactly. This is about getting out there, being very energetic, and showing people that they can achieve something far greater than they believed before. And when you're going into a business, businesses can get locked in. And that is, the challenge for someone like me. And I have made, by my contribution, got people thinking in a wholly different way. So, the business says we are distinctive in this way. And I say, can you be even more distinctive? Can you be a magnet? Can you create an energy within the company that really drives you on, a new, plateau? Let's look at something wholly different, and you can find things, and often those ideas do come from staff within the company. So the fact that you have to come from the outside sometimes to unlock the ideas and the energy and the imagination of people inside the company is something that I've understood. And I brought people in even when I had my own company. I used to bring people in to try and get a fresh perspective and a fresh energy. So it really is a useful thing to do. And, sometimes also you see collaborations that people haven't seen. I always think of this story, and it's a true one, in New York. I think it's in Brooklyn. A bookshop owner was sitting with his next door neighbour, who was a pizza shop owner, and they were sitting bemoaning the lack of business. And someone passing sat down and says, "Oh, miserable faces." And he said, "Why don't you put the two shops together and create a pizzeria bookshop?" And they did, and business thrived. So, it's finding those little gems that people might not have even thought of. And this is where the kind of lateral thinking comes in. And I do bring lateral thinking as well as experience. And, I've got so many examples. So when people see examples, they see possibilities.
But that's it. It's, when you are working in something and someone comes along and looks in where everyone in the organisation is looking out, you do offer those snippets or the wisdom to help that business grow. And like yourself and myself, we're both executive coaches. And that's the beauty of it, because the creativity that we have, the experience and the knowledge that we bring, and sometimes when you say something which is so obvious to people, they go, "Oh my God, that's a great idea." And you go,
Yes.
And when people say that to you, even for your own business, you go, "Why didn't I think of that?"
Yes.
And that's the beauty of it. But just jumping back to what you said, it is all about passion. It is about, the belief system. You have to have that passion and the belief system, and you have to be doing it for a reason. And what I've learned over the years when I'm speaking to my clients, what is the end result? If you want your clients to have A, say you want to have A for yourself or B for yourself, you then have to make sure your clients get A or B, because that's how it works. The more you give for other people to get, the better you receive as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the thing that I focus on when I first start working with an organisation, or when I'm standing up on stage, is talking about the purpose. What is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? What are you passionate about? And when you can turn, people with job titles into people with purpose, you achieve so much more, because they're not going to work to do a job. They're not fulfilling a job description. They're fulfilling, a passionate purpose. And I had this experience in South Beirut, and it was just after the bombing in 2006. And, the rubble was everywhere. It was horrible to see, just rubble everywhere. And I was walking around with my cousin, because my mother's Lebanese, so I've got this connection there. And, in the rubble, or on top of the rubble, there was this guy selling clothing. So I said to my cousin, that's very entrepreneurial. He says, that used to be a shop. So I went up and I said to him, it must have been horrible losing your shop. And he kind of shrugged and he said, I'm not a shopkeeper. I give people style and confidence. And that was a real kind of epiphany moment. I said to my cousin, this is a real road to Damascus moment. He says, well, actually, you're on the road to Damascus. So, he was a guy who saw the shop just as a vehicle for delivering his purpose and his passion. Now, when you tell people that, it kind of opens their minds to the idea that, yes, the reason I come to work is because I want to achieve something. There's some kind of vision in there. And, I've helped to change company visions because they just don't kind of resonate with people. They're not exciting. And when you can create this really distinctive vision that gets people excited, it energy inside a company. And that's a gift.
It does. It is change. Tell us, Mike, what is the one, if you were to put your finger on the one biggest issue or concern that people have that you come across, what would it be? Would it be self-esteem? Would it be not trusting their judgment? What would the one big thing that you'd recognise which is right across the board?
Well, I think it's believing that their contribution is either marginalised, that the ideas have a hierarchy, or that they simply feel they're there to do a job and not to come up with ideas, and obviously to avoid getting the blame or making a mistake. So it's the avoidance of risk. That's the biggest thing I come across, because people have ideas and they have a desire to go to work with a spring in their step, but sometimes there is a blame culture, and there's a kind of this is the way we do things, that'll never work attitude. And when you lift that and say that holds people back, and often CEOs are the worst culprits, because they often drive an organisation based on past experience rather than the future. Does that make sense? It
does indeed. Tell me, we're just come to the end here.
Yeah.
What's 2020 holding for you, my friend?
Well, I've started getting some really good bookings right around the country, and to me, because we have in this country an election going on at the moment, which is, crushingly dispiriting. So it's important to lift spirits, but it's also important to start, working towards building an economy that's vibrant, that's dynamic, and that is not up to government. Government will probably try and screw it up. In the case of the United Kingdom at the moment, that's what I think is happening. But it's about, people like you and I making things happen.
Definitely.
And I've got already, a whole host of bookings around, actually I can say now, in Ireland, a city where I got my first entrepreneurial experience as a busker in Grafton Street in 1968.
Wow.
There you are. That's
there
the story.
Go. That's it. Tell me, where can people reach out to you if they want to connect with you on LinkedIn or check out your website?
They can check out the website, which is www.thinktastic.co.uk or www.mikestevenson.net.
Mike, that's brilliant, and thanks for coming on to Business Eye, and we will